Welcome to Rhinex Students Above and Beyond. My name is Valerie Feit, and I'm the K-12 Enrichment Coordinator at the Rhinex School District. Above and Beyond is your opportunity to meet some of the upcoming young people in our community who will one day be our leaders. Today I'm here with Alexzandra Tartaglia, who is in the 11th grade and on the High Honor Roll. She recently won first place in physics in the Tri-County Science Fair and a United States Metric Award at the Westchester Engineering and Science Fair. She is founder of Young Musicians for a Cause, and she is an opera singer. Daniel Young is also in the 11th grade and on the High Honor Roll. He is founder of Rhinex High School's a cappella club, and Danny plays violin, trombone, piano, clarinet, and the American flute. It's actually the Native American flute. As a singer, he enjoys the Broadway repertoire. So welcome to you both. But before we meet you and have a chance to speak, we are going to hear you perform. The song is All I Ask of You from Phantom of the Opera.
No more talk of darkness, forget these wide-eyed fears. I'm here, nothing can harm you. My words will warm and calm you. Let me be your freedom, let me dry your tears. I'm here with you, beside you, to comfort and to guide you.
All I ask for is one love, one lifetime. Turn my head with talk of summertime.
Let me be your shelter, let me be your light. You're safe, no one will find you. Your fears are far behind you.
All I want is freedom, a world with no more night, and you with me, beside me, to hold me and to hide me.
Then say you'll share with me one love, one lifetime. Let me lead you from your solitude. Say you need me with you here beside you. Anywhere you go, let me go too. Christine, that's all I ask of you.
All I ask for is one love, one lifetime. Say the word and I will follow you.
Share each day with me, each night, each morning.
Say you love me.
You know I do. Love me, that's all I ask of you. That's all I ask of you.
Well, it was wonderful to hear you perform. A lot of work goes into that. So my first question for you both is, when did you start? How did you get started in music? Let's start with you, Alexandra.
Sure. So I was in the chorus in elementary school, and the chorus director, Mr. Galgano, when we had our solo auditions, he noticed that I had a good voice, so he recommended that I continue being in the chorus when I got to middle school. So then in middle school, the chorus director, Mark DiMaggio, he also noticed that. He told me that I should continue singing and maybe take private voice lessons, because he thought that I should pursue this singing, because he thought that I had talent. And that's where I met my voice teacher, Bengi Tashi.
Okay, so you really came through our school, and that's how you got started. But Danny, how did you get started?
Well, my entire family, extended family, is very musical. I've got a number of professional musicians in my family. So growing up, it wouldn't be so much of a choice as a necessity. When we got together, there would be everyone would play a song on the piano and sing. So it was kind of, I learned through a mental osmosis of sorts rather than an actual starting of an instrument.
So your family gatherings were people doing what?
Oh, well, we would sing, for instance, Christmas carols at Christmas time, and we have a pianist in the family. I think everyone pretty much plays the piano, but and we have a clarinetist and a bassoonist and a trombonist, and so they'd all play different parts, and they'd have a medley of sorts of different Christmas carols. So we'd kind of do that.
What fun. Now, Alexandra, your family, your parents are in the sciences, they're doctors.
Yes.
So they're not musicians. So
No.
you came to music by yourself.
Right.
Okay. You just mentioned something interesting, Danny. You mentioned piano, that everyone plays piano. Do you both play piano?
Yes.
Yeah.
So how important is playing the piano?
Well, playing the piano is very important, especially for singers. I've been playing since first grade, and I am continuing to play. And the thing is, especially with singing or any instrument, I think knowing how to play the piano is really essential, because the piano is the foundation for music theory, and it's the foundation for music in general. And if you know how to play the piano, then really you can, like, for example, for me, for instance, when I play the piano, I can pluck out the melodies that I have to play when I sing, or my accompaniments, and it just helps you learn music and understand music.
Why do you think it's important?
Well, playing other instruments, I can kind of attest to the fact that the piano helps you pick up other instruments really quickly, because it, as Alexandra just said, it's the basis of pretty much all music theory, and the stav system is based on the piano keyboard, and so you can really get a sense of what just the core of music is, and through that you can do a lot of other things and just pick up new instruments rather quickly, just if you know the basics of the piano.
When you play so many different instruments. I've always wondered how somebody can pick up an instrument. So say you're playing the piano, pick up a clarinet or a trombone. How do you know how to play it?
Well, again, it's very helpful to know the piano, because you can kind of mimic the sound that you want to play, and it's very important because it gives you a musical technique to kind of strive to.
You must have fingering differences and things like that.
Yeah, there's a lot of dexterity needed for pretty much all handheld instruments, and you need to be able to have good coordination, and the piano is very helpful with that.
Okay. Now, you both obviously have learned this, so you must have teachers. What is your situation? Tell me about your teachers.
Right, well, my first teacher, she introduced me to opera, and ever since, she really...
and what was her name?
Her name was Bengi Tashi.
Okay.
Yeah, she she was really, she still is my mentor today, and she really got me into opera. And now I study at Manhattan School of Music, and my voice teacher is Jane Olean. And excuse me. And I think that, well, really my lessons are that's where I make all my progress, is in my lessons, and they're very important. And the other thing is not only your voice lessons, but also, like, for instance, at MSM, I'm there all day because I take many other classes. Like, I take music theory, I take ear training, I also take acting classes, and chorus. So there's so many things that play a role in singing, and you have to learn all of them.
So you're in a comprehensive program at the Manhattan School of Music.
Yes.
And you had to audition to get in.
Yes.
So that's very impressive. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And that's all day Saturday, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So now what about you, Danny?
Well, as I said before, my family was kind of more musical, so it was more of a community learning experience rather than just going to a lesson. And I did have, my grandmother was my piano teacher at first, but it quickly becomes very stressed in the family. So it's better for the situation that I was in. I feel that it was a more organic experience coming from me rather than coming from just one outside source, because it's very hard when you're in your family to have a professional relationship. So it was mostly just my entire family giving me comments.
Was it hard when you were kids? Did your parents have to force you to practice and then it got easier? Was it hard when you were little?
I mean, piano wasn't really my favorite thing to do, so my parents, they would obviously tell me to practice, but I think once you learn a piece and you get into the interpretation of the piece, it all becomes more fun.
So you're telling kids who maybe watch and keep practicing?
Yeah, I feel it's very important because like pretty much all young kids, I didn't like to play the piano either, but I feel like there's a hump that you get over, at which point it becomes more fun, and I think that's the point when you really start getting good in it. And it's important that it gets to that step and you can really take it into your own hands.
Which is an interesting process because you're doing the same thing, getting more advanced from the time that you're very young. Let's talk about practicing. How do you, let's start with you, Danny, on this one. How do you practice? Tell me about your process.
Well, there's many studies out right now about practice, and there are really two types of practicing. There is just the rote practicing for the sake of practicing, which is, it helps, but it's not really where you learn the most. Then there's something called deliberate practice, which is where you actively try and find your flaws and try to fix them. And that really is what distinguishes the more expert people from the amateurs, because what happens is the more self-criticizing you can be, the better you become on a continual basis.
So how do you mediate that? Do you always practice deliberately, or do you sometimes veer off of that kind of?
Well, I try, but it is very hard. You have to maintain a sort of mental awareness of what you're doing and kind of get out of the bias that it's yourself. And it is very hard when you don't have someone like right next to you, like lending you an outside ear.
What about you? What is your process?
Well, I mean, for singing especially, I think that it's definitely not the quantity, it's the quality of the practice, because your voice, you can only be singing for so long before you start to get tired, so you have to make really good use of your time. And I think that what Danny was saying really plays a big role in singing, because I won't be able to sing a piece thousands of times to get it right. I have to really focus on the parts where I need work. And I think that that's really important for any musician to be able to realize that.
To be very strategic.
Yeah.
So let's talk about what's happening now in your own music. What are you working on? What are you challenged by at this point?
Well, right now I'm kind of working on the pieces that I already know, trying to perfect them. And I strongly believe that you can't really perfect a piece until you've had it for a long time. On the piano, it's like 5 years, and there are many stages, I suppose, to really perfecting a piece, and the first one is just learning it and really getting a hold technically on it, and then once you've done that, I think you can move on to a more emotional stage, and then to the more tonal qualities of a piece. And so right now I work on getting really perfecting the pieces that I already know.
So that's what you're doing. What about in music and in singing? How do you pick the pieces that challenge you and move you forward? And then how do you approach those pieces?
Right, well, for singers, you don't want to, the thing about singing is your voice doesn't fully mature until you're in your mid-20s. And you have to be careful with the repertoire you pick because some things are too heavy for the voice or may not be appropriate age-wise. So usually when I pick a piece, like it has to be, first of all, it has to be age appropriate, and then usually what I do is I try and use my technique and apply it to every piece that I do. And as you progress in your singing, you keep going back to old repertoire and modifying your piece based on your new technique. So it's a constant changing of the way it's a procedure where you're constantly changing things in your piece in order to adapt it to your singing style.
So you mean in the beginning you might have a note you can't reach, and then when you
Right.
go back you have the technique and the strength to do that?
Yes.
Something like that. That's
Yeah.
really interesting. One thing that always has fascinated me, as long as we're on the subject of technique, is breathing. What does it mean for a singer to breathe from their diaphragm? I've never understood that.
Well, singing, you constantly have to expand your lungs, and you do so many breathing exercises in order to increase your lung capacity, because without having the proper breath support, the sound won't be of high quality. And you need to also practice, using your breath wisely so that you're not just letting everything out and then you're left with no breath. You have to be able to sustain it and constantly having to, like for instance, when I get a piece, the first thing I usually do is I mark where I'm supposed to breathe, because you have to take so many things into account with phrasing, especially. Like you can't, like for instance, when you speak, you wouldn't say, I went to the mall. You would say, I went to the mall. And it's in singing, you need to be careful where you're breathing. You don't want to interrupt any phrases.
I've always wondered, that's interesting, because I've always wondered how that works for a singer, but I've also thought a lot about wind instruments and brass instruments. Is it the same idea?
Definitely. The way I see breath is it's really, it lets you control your entire physiology. If you breathe slower, you can slow your heart down and things like that, and you can really get into a certain type of mindset through your breath. And it's even important in piano, even not in a wind instrument, to be able to breathe right and get in the right mindset for that. But it's especially important in the wind instruments because you need to be able to breathe through the lower portion of your lungs in order to be able to get high notes. So it's interesting, there's an inverse correlation there. It's the low notes, you really need to think with the high of your lungs, and with the high notes you really need to dig deep low to get the force out of it.
Very interesting, both of you. Well, you're both accomplished enough that the technique is serving the purpose of the artistic expression. And I want to talk a little bit about that. A lot of the singing, we're going to go to singing for you this time. A lot of the repertoire seems to be about things that are part of an adult life and not necessarily experienced by people your own age. How do you relate emotionally to music and to the words when it is expressing something that is out of the range of your own experience? Let's start with you, as you're a melodramatic opera singer, so we'll start with you.
Yeah, so it is really hard when you get a role that's just so different from your own personality. Right now I'm singing an aria, and the character is a maid, a middle-aged woman, who's trying to convince two young girls to cheat on their husbands when they're away at war. So when I first, and it's really comical, but when I first, looked at the score, I thought, how am I ever going to to be able to play this character that's so different from me. But then what you end up doing is you realize that they're not so different from me, these characters. Like for instance, all this woman is trying to do is convince two people to do something she wants them to do, and I think everyone has tried to convince someone to do something. And so you can relate, you can find a way, and also you have to use your imagination too. But you end up finding a way to relate to the characters.
How do you see this?
Well, I kind of have the same situation. I have a song that I'm doing right now about a jaundiced alcoholic who just went through a divorce, and from my position, that's very, very strange. But really, his core emotion is what you want to emulate, and you have to really extract that from the character. And so it takes a lot of study. You need to find the context that they're singing through in the play or in the opera or whatever it may be. But so really, once you extract the core, then you can relate it more to yourself. And I've been disappointed in my life before. Everyone's been disappointed or some form of that feeling.
Well, it's interesting, from your perspective as a Broadway singer, because it's in English, that in your case, it's not necessarily in English. It could be in what languages do you sing in?
I mean, you can sing in English, German, French, Italian, Spanish, even Russian, pretty much any language.
How do you do that?
It's really hard because the thing is, not only do you have to know what you're saying, but also how to pronounce what you're saying. And usually what singers do is they have to learn the EPA, which is the International Phonetic Alphabet, and it's a way to read words using, and it's based off of vowel sound, of the sounds of language. And it's also really hard because a lot of the times you're trying to, when you're interpreting a piece, you need to put stress on certain words for whatever the song means. So like, for instance, if you want to say, I love you, there's so many different ways to say that phrase. Like you could be saying, I love you as opposed to I love him, or maybe you're trying to say that I love you and not this other person, or maybe I love you as opposed to I like you. So you're trying to put stress on different words, so you have to know exactly what each word correlates to in English.
Very, very interesting. So to move forward, you're pulling all of these different strands emotionally, technically. Ultimately, it's performance. I think that's where the tire meets the road for both of you. Let's talk about that. Do you think that in terms of performing, that competitions have a place in the performing arts?
Well, I haven't done vocal competitions as much as Alexzandra has, but I have done competitions in my sports that I do and things, and I do believe that it's important, but it's really not for me what's the core of what music is. And my piano teacher, she tells me that, or my grandmother, she tells me that you only have 30% of what your potential is in any given performance. And I believe that it's very important to be able to control yourself and have perfected it before you go on to perform it. And competition definitely will help you with that, because you'll be performing it more and you'll be nervous and you'll be able to get a grip on your own nerves and kind of feel that out. And so I do think it's important, but in moderation.
And now you've competed and you've actually won Golden Voice of America first place in classical and contemporary music. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
So do you find that a valuable experience?
Yeah, I think competitions are very important, and as Danny was saying, to just practice performing, and it's so important that you learn to, because when you're nervous, things happen that you would have never expected. You'll forget the words, or your voice will crack, so it's good to constantly be putting yourself under that pressure. But I think it's also really important to not get too carried away with trying to be the best or trying to win, because that's not really what it's about. It's more about improving yourself. And I think competitions gives you something to strive for, so you constantly have a goal that you're looking forward to. But I don't think that they are the most important thing at all. I think that they're helpful, but not the main goal. The main goal shouldn't be winning.
Your main goal is artistic.
Yeah.
Your own evolution as artists. So are you, we're going to kind of wind this up. I've got a final question for both of you. What do you see in your future? Are you going into the performing arts, or are you have other kinds of plans?
Well, my academic life is very much dominated by the sciences like chemistry, physics, possibly quantum mechanics, and I know I'd love to go into those and possibly do research in that area. But of course, I would always stick with music. I feel it's separate, but it's an essential part of my life.
So two different kinds of essential elements to your life, science and music.
Yeah.
What about you? Do you think you might be a performer?
I mean, I'm gonna definitely continue studying music through college. I want to maybe try like joint university conservatory program or something like that. This summer I'm gonna go to Bel Canto Institute in Florence to study voice, and I definitely want to continue. I'm not sure what I want to be exactly yet, but I do know that I want to keep studying.
And you also had the physics award, so you're also a science person. So
Yeah.
it makes me feel good to think that we're going to have scientists who are musicians in our future. That feels really nice. Well, I wish you both the best. I know it's going to work out great for both of you. You're wonderful performers and wonderful young people. So that's our show. That's our show for now. To see previous episodes of Rhinex Students, you can go to LMC-TV's website, click Videos on Demand, Single and Series Programming, and then Above and Beyond. I want to thank our producer and director, Remy Litvin, an 11th grader at Rhinex High School, the LMC-TV staff, and our wonderful volunteer crew. My name is Valerie Feit, and please join us again when we look at other students who go above and beyond. Thank you for watching.